We'll to admit guests as they arrive. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Beth Rossner. I'm the CEO of the Berkeley Chamber of Commerce, and I have my colleague Andy Godwin on the call, our Director of Events and Marketing. I want to welcome you to our second part of our Berkeley Business Bootcamp this year. Today's topic is managing a crisis. I do want to just take a moment to thank the sponsor of this program, the Berkeley Public Library. Their sponsorship has allowed us to make this free and open to the public, and we're delighted to have them with us. I'd like to introduce Julia from the library, and she's going to just introduce herself and tell us a little bit about the resources available to you there.
Hi, thanks, Beth. My name is Julia Wiswell. I'm a librarian at the Berkeley Public Library. My colleagues and I are super thrilled to be partnering with the Chamber for the second round of Berkeley Business Bootcamp again this year. So just really briefly before we begin, I wanted to give a reminder that the library is open for indoor services again. And we're offering a full calendar of online and outdoor programming right now, which includes tech help, resume workshops, and legal appointment with a broad variety of other activities. We also have a large selection of online databases accessible through our website, which includes an entire section of business and information learning resources such as Reference Solutions, Udemy, Morningstar, and the Legal Information Reference Center. If you have any questions about the library, I will put my contact information in the chat, as well as how you can contact our reference department to get assistance with anything library related. With that, I will turn it back over to Beth so that we can get started for today's discussion.
Wonderful. Thanks, Julia. So now I'm delighted to welcome our speaker today from EOS HR Consulting, Sarah Skoronsky. Sarah, welcome. Take it away.
Thank you so much. Let me share my screen here. So thank you so much for having me here again. I really appreciate it. Today we're talking about crisis, and unfortunately it's something that has become a little too commonplace for us. So I wanted us to be able to talk about what it means to actually lead through a crisis. So the first part of this, we're going to quickly go through kind of what a crisis can be and defining leadership, crisis leadership. And then we'll spend more time at the end talking about dealing with it in terms of employee relations. And about a little bit about me. So my company manages employee HR, company HR for small businesses who are not ready to have a full-time HR. We really get from an in-house HR person. Our group of employees can offer that to your employees, including support during crises, including support during things like pandemics and technical problems and all kinds of issues that come up. All of these cause stress in our lives, and it really is a matter of managing and the leadership that we can provide to make sure that we're able to sustain the business as well as the employees through that. So really quickly, to define what is a crisis. It's a difficult situation. It's something that happens, it's unexpected. And as I said, the past 2 years now, we have been inundated with crisis. So you have technical breakdowns, you have malicious attacks, and then you have the pandemic. There is just so much that is being thrown at us that crisis is it's not just a one and done thing anymore. It seems like it's coming at us constantly. And so there's two sides to crisis leadership. And one is the crisis management side. And crisis management is, what is your response when there's a crisis? Do you have something in place? And I'm not going to go too much into this because these are things that you need to sit down with your leadership, with the management group, with your employees, with your staff, with your counselors and consultants, and figure out, what do we do when there is a crisis? how are we going to respond? But crisis leadership is more about what's the bigger impact, and you have to close your doors. There's certain steps you have to take, but leadership is how you're actually responding to that and how you're presenting yourself to the organization and to the world at large of how are you going to manage your way through this. So again, the crisis leadership is really how a leader deals with that unpredictable event. Do you go running for the hills, or do you go and hide under your blanket, or do you step up and say, okay, this sucks. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to manage this? How am I, as a leader, going to be that pillar of strength for my employees and make sure that they know that we're doing everything we can to support each other and them? So a little bit about preparing for the unknown, just to kind of put the basic guidelines out there. When you are doing crisis management, you want to think about what are the risks, and the risks have expanded in the last 18 months. It used to be, what if the computers went down? What if a customer gave you a bad review? What if what if somebody came in and robbed a store? Now it's, what if you can't even open? What if no one was available to come into work? What if there are no customers? How are you going to evaluate these things, and how are you going to manage those risks? And that's going to be different for every single company. What's important is that you start to prepare for those. It could be little things like, who has the emergency set of keys, or who knows the passcodes to everything. It also means that not just one person can know that plan. If you are the only person who knows that plan and you get sick or you get hurt, who's going to make sure that things continue to move forward? So you want to make sure that not only do you have the plan, but that others know about it and others know what their role is in that plan. When it comes to leadership, it's all about communication. Communicate, and then listen. Because one of the biggest things that came out of the pandemic was that nobody knew what was going on. And it became very scary, because everybody was saying that they knew what was going on, but nobody knew what was going on. It's okay if you don't know what's going on. It's okay to say, hey, we're kind of in this gray area. This is what we know right now. And as soon as we have more information, we will let you know. And to have the constant updates. What will happen when you are not communicating is that people will create communication on their own. They will do fear mongering. They will create stories. They will assume that your lack of telling them something is because something's wrong, and therefore they all need to go running for the hills themselves. So it's really important to over communicate, even if it is, we don't know yet. This is what we do know. This is what we don't know. And as soon as we know this, we'll let you know, and we're going to come back tomorrow and we're going to tell you the same thing until we know the answers. You also want to communicate potential resolutions and actions. As they're coming up, it's important to make sure that you are letting people know this is our plan right now, and it may change. One of the things that we learned, and it's the last point, is to be open and flexible, is that you need to be able to pivot. Pivot. I remember at some point last year, I was like, if I never hear the word pivot again, I will be very happy. But you have to be able to do that when you're in small business, when you are own your own organization, or you're a leader of any kind. You need to be able to pivot. You need to be able to show empathy and communicate. You are going through, you know what you're going through, you know what your stress is and what your anxiety is, because you're trying to manage this. Your employees are going through that also. And so it's really important as a leader to show empathy, let them know that this is scary. This is a problem. We all are going through this, and we are going through it together, which means we are stronger, and we will get out on the other side. We will make it through. And then, as I said, you really want to be open and flexible. Because what is the resolution today may change tomorrow. And depending on what that crisis is, it could change that quickly. And so you need to be open and flexible, because it could be that you need to change because one of your staff is no longer available to work with you. It could be that you can't open your doors. It could be that you can't get online and you're an online salesperson or online. Don't look at things as, oh, I can't do this. What you have to look at is what you can do, and being flexible and open to those changes. When we talk about empathy for our employees, it's really important to manage the employee wellness through the crisis. When you have an employee and you're so wound up in what's going on for you, it's really important to stop and check in with your employees, because they are wound up and they are stressed out as well. When you're looking for signs of stress, you want to look at what's happening to the employee. So personal physical effects of stress are things like headaches, depression, insomnia, heartburn, all of those physical things that just suddenly start happening and you're not sure why. That's all stress. That's your body reacting to what it doesn't know how to process. When an employee is under stress, things will happen like their productivity will reduce. They'll be distracted. They'll make mistakes. They'll be unmotivated. And in a time of crisis, the last thing you want to do is let somebody kind of float away who's under stress, or suddenly feel like you have to manage a performance issue because somebody's under stress and that's not being addressed. So by addressing these things, you want to make sure that you're recognizing those symptoms. So if people are irritated or angry, if they're constantly uncertain or nervous or anxious, if they always seem like they're in overwhelm, how can you actually stop and help them to overcome that, and help them to come back to center and work within the company and work with no understanding what's going on. Some of the things that we recommend companies offer for their employees during a crisis is offering an employee assistance program. So an employee assistance program is a program that allows employees to gain access to mental health workers, it can also allow them access to legal assistance or childcare assistance, because as we saw with the pandemic, those became the stressors. How are we going to manage taking care of our children who are not going to school while we're still trying to work? And so having something like an employee assistance program will give them access to somebody that can help them with that. Employee assistance programs are generally set up through something like they're attached onto something like a life insurance program, which for my organization, I have a very small life insurance program, but it included an employee assistance program. And so for the $5 a month that I pay for a $10,000 life insurance plan for my employees, I'm also getting that employee assistance program. So it's something that's very cost effective and easy to do, and it's confidential. The employee can choose to use it or not. The important thing is to remember that you have it, and because a lot of people forget that they have it, and then when you're in crisis, you forget that this is a resource for you. You want to make sure you're giving reasonable accommodations when possible. When somebody isn't capable of working because they're stressed out, you need to stop and look at what they need. Do they need to slow down? Do they need to take a break? Do they need a day off? Sometimes they just need some time to regroup. But also look at what's reasonable for you as the company owner, as the business owner, as the manager. What are you needing? What do you need to do to also survive and for the employee, as well as support your business? Sometimes just realizing during the time of crisis, it feels like everything is moving really fast and you have to keep moving fast. The reality is that you can stop and take a breath. I mean, unless you are in a dangerous situation where something is on fire or somebody is in physical danger, if you take that time to take a breath and make sure that you know what you're doing and what your employees are doing, that will go a long way, because then you can make sure that you have your employees in line with what you're trying to accomplish. So they're not potentially going off of what you talked about yesterday. So today the plan might change. Let's take a breath. Let's slow down. Let's make sure everybody's on the same page and realize that we can move forward from there. If you are in a situation where you are not working together anymore, make sure that you to have that interaction that's not just about work or the crisis. How are we going? How are we doing as people? How are we doing, creating that culture, creating that team, creating those relationships so that they can support each other through this crisis. You want to make sure that you're setting boundaries for people so that they are not feeling all consumed by work and the crisis. You want them to be able to focus on what they need to do to take care of themselves personally and still be able to come back to work. And then, as always, you want to promote good mental and physical health. Make sure that people are taking breaks. Make sure that people are walking away from work and are able to sit down and eat their lunch or eat their meal or take a walk or whatever it is they need to do. So overall, the leading through a crisis is really about, it's more than just having the plan in place. The plan for crisis management is extremely important. You want to make sure you know what those steps are, that's your fallback, but you also need to project forward and make sure you're communicating, make sure that you are letting people know where you're at the time. And that when things are changing, that you're able to communicate those changes as they're happening. You want to make sure you're caring for your employees. Make sure that as you're planning and going through the stress yourself, that you're caring for yourself, and that you are making sure that communication is filtering down so that they understand what's happening and are able to then support you and your business. And finally, always continue to support employee mental health. Even when we're not in crisis, which hopefully we will roll out of crisis here because it's become the norm rather than the individual item. It's now you get to a point where your adrenaline is just always running, and so we have to take care of ourselves and support our mental health and make sure that we're taking care of how we're managing everything day to day. A crisis is a make or break moment. And so this is really an opportunity to choose how you want to be remembered as a leader and make sure that you're taking care of yourself and you're taking care of your employees so that you and your business is here for the long haul. It was short but sweet, and I'd like to open it up for any questions that anybody has or any comments. I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of things that they've dealt with over the last 18 months in crisis.
Yes, if anyone would like to share or ask a question, you can unmute or you can type it into the chat box and we'll see it. It's so interesting, Sarah, because this, the COVID pandemic, it really brought to light some businesses, then 50 things went wrong because of that. They couldn't open, they didn't have customers, they didn't have staff. Mm-hmm. So it's it's amazing because I doubt many people ever planned for a pandemic.
Well, a lot of people, even myself, I have on my task list to have my contingency plan set up. And that's just in case as a solo business owner or something happens to me or I'm not able to work. But we don't think about that. It's just like, I just got to get through today. I just got to make it through. Am I going to make payroll? Am I going to keep the lights on? We don't think about something that is completely out of our control taking over like that. And, unfortunately, there's the pandemic. There is, we've had a lot of civil unrest and that's affected a lot of businesses. We've had a lot of techno, the cyber attacks, and that's affected a lot of businesses. It's no longer just coming at us one at a time. It's coming at us constantly from every direction. And it's no longer really an option. We have to find out, we're either going to create a plan and have at least some sort of structure to work from, or you're just going to get hit with it and have to scramble as you're going through, as most people did during the pandemic. But if you're not ready for it now, it just gets harder and harder to keep up.
And in the work that you do you help specific employers create tailored management plans? Is that something that you do?
We work with our clients. So we work generally as an outsourced HR. So we will work closely with our clients and the management teams to create those plans, specifically around employee engagement and keeping the employees safe and healthy during those type of situations. So we're that voice on as the planning is happening of, okay, you've thought about your computer systems, you've thought about your your electric bill or whatever that is, but have you thought about your employees? What are you going to do if this key employee is out? Or how are you going to manage if these people are sick, and what's your backup plan there? So we are participating in that type of planning.
I'm curious if anyone would like to share, has anyone already created an action plan like this, and what does it look like? I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but we welcome your interaction.
I would encourage people to not do it alone. I think it might even be great to create a group if people were interested, where you can just shoot off, like, did you think about this? Did you think about this? Hey, what are you gonna do if this happens? And whether you're doing it with a group of other business consultant who can just think about what the different aspects are, because there's the operation side, there's the finance side, there's the employee side, there's just so many different facets to it that there's no way that you can think of everything all at once. And also, it shouldn't be a one and done plan. It really needs to be something that you review, because things are changing so rapidly just in the world in general, that the program that you had in place, the software that you're using might be completely different in a year or two. And so you want to make sure that you have updated whatever information you need to for that as well.
And to make sure that you do regular check-ins with your employees, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes, making sure that whoever is being assigned to a task, in an emergency, is actually responsible for that. It's almost, when I worked in corporate HR, we would, and especially when I worked in like high-rise buildings, there were emergency response teams. Every company in the building had an emergency response team. And once a year we would get together and we would have a meeting, and it's like, who's responsible? What are you supposed to do? Where are you supposed to go? And it should be no different for a small business. Who's responsible for making sure that this is taken care of? Who's responsible for this? And having that check-in on an annual basis at the minimum would be good. And if you're physically someplace, making sure people know what do you need to do physically when in that space.
Well, those are wonderful tools to have. I know at a job I used to have, earthquakes obviously are a big threat
Yes.
here. And so we had our earthquake drills and the earthquake plan. And that's something that most people don't even think about. Where do you report to if your office is closed?
That's
And,
right.
and then do you have a plan C if you can't get to that location?
Right.
So it really is amazing, all the little things that we don't always think about that we should be.
Right. And honestly, I don't think there's a way to think about everything, but what you want is as a starting point, so you're not starting at zero. You don't want to be faced with, an earthquake shutting down your business, and you have to create the entire plan as you go. You want to be able to say, okay, so the earthquake shut us down, and we know that we have these tools online and we can do these things remotely, and this is where you show up. And it's having that baseline and then making adjustments. Like I said, having that flexibility to roll with whatever happens next and make those adjustments, and then continually communicating that out to the employees of, okay, this didn't work, we tried it, it didn't work, here's what we're going to do now.
And I had one more question. I had not heard of an employee assistance program. So is that something that's solely offered through like a group life insurance company, or are there other?
Nope. There are standalone employee assistance programs. There's a number of them that you can buy sort of off the shelf. A lot of times, if you're working with a benefits broker, they would be able to provide you guidance on different programs, or maybe get you quotes for different programs that offer that. They usually range, I would say, if it's an off the shelf, it could range from like maybe between $5 and $15 per employee, depending on the program that you're going with. But they're in the long run, they're not super expensive, so it's a minimal cost. I really like the ones where they're added onto something where it's also another benefit. So it's something that the employee can see, like a life insurance plan, but they also have access to the employee assistance program in addition to that.
That's wonderful. And it seems like a very small investment for your employees' well-being.
It is. It's a small investment and allows them some peace of mind. Like I said, it's not just for mental health, but it's also for legal assistance and assisting with financial assistance and a number of other programs that they offer. So it covers all those things that could be distracting to an employee when they are going through maybe a personal crisis. It allows them to work with somebody directly on that, and allows them to hopefully maintain more focus when they're at work.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Are there any other questions or comments for Sarah while we have her?
Can you give us some resources on the EAP programs, like where we would be able to locate them for our small businesses?
What I can do is I can find some resources and send them to Beth, and then you can forward them out. Would that work?
Yeah, we'd be happy to do that. We're going to put this recording on our website, and we'll send out a thank you to everyone who registered, and we'll make sure to include some useful resources from Sarah. I'm definitely curious about that as well.
Yeah, happy to share.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I'd like to invite you all back in a month for our third session, which is actually going to cover cybersecurity. So
very important, very important.
Yeah, very important, very timely. I mean, we read about these hacks every day in the news, it seems. So we'll be here at noon on Thursday, December 9th. You can register on our website, berkeleychamber.com. And again, I want to thank Sarah very much for your time today and your expertise. And a big thank you to the Berkeley Public Library. And we look forward to seeing you all next month.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your days, everybody.